Education Town Hall with Interim Superintendent Larry Bowers. This is our first town hall of the 2015 to 2016 school year. Today we'll be taking questions from our studio audience from Rockville High School, and in addition, the rest of Rockville is watching from their classrooms. Also, students have submitted questions through Twitter and email, and we'll be addressing those periodically throughout the show as well. So before I start, I would like to recognize a few of my board colleagues in the back. I see Dr. Judy Daka and Mr. Mike Durso, so I would certainly like to thank them for being here with us today. I'm Eric Gersey, your student member of the board and a junior at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. So thank you, Mr. Bowers. Thanks for being with us today.
Glad to be here.
So with that, Mr. Bowers will say a few opening remarks, and then we'll go straight to the questions.
Just share a little bit about myself. I am not an educator. I am not a teacher. I actually came to Montgomery County Public Schools 37 years ago. I was a public accountant, and I did economic consulting work for about 6 years before I came to the school system. And since I came to the school system, I've been doing a lot of policy and budget work. I became the chief financial officer in 1993, the chief operating officer in 1999. And I've always been seen and like to be kind of the person behind the scenes as opposed to a person who's out in front like this. About a year ago, when I was prepared to retire, the Board of Education talked to me and asked me if I would be interested in staying on another year while they continued their search for a superintendent. So I agreed to do that until I retire next July. So that's, and again, it's one thing I always tell people about Montgomery County Public Schools. It's one, a great place to work, and it's also a great place to go to school. I have 2 children who are much older. They graduated from, went to Richard Montgomery and graduated about 18, 17 years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers. So we'll start off with our first question. Adam.
Mr. Bowers, what are some long-term goals that you'd like to achieve during your time as superintendent?
So I think the long-term goals that we really need to address, and one of the challenges we've had is that we've been through a very difficult economic and budget situation over the last 7 years. We've actually had to make some very substantial budget cuts, almost 1,800 positions. One of the things that I'm going to push hard on this year is to get the state and the county council to provide more funding for Montgomery County Public Schools so we can begin to restore some of the reductions that have been made. We've actually had to cut a number of classroom teacher positions and increase class sizes. We've had to cut other school-based positions like media positions and media assistant positions, some media specialist positions, and a lot of central services positions. So we just haven't been able to provide the support. One of the challenges and one of the statistics I use is that over the last since 2009, we've grown by almost 19,000 students. About 2/3 of our students ride the bus to school. We have not added one more position in transportation over that period of time. So we've had to create efficiencies in our bus operations just to provide that additional level of service. And so one of the things I hope to accomplish this year is to get additional funding, both on the operating side and also the capital side. I think all of you know, because of all of that growth we have, we need new buildings. We need new schools, we need additions, we need to modernize buildings like we've done here almost a decade ago at Rockville High School. So my priority this year is really to get additional funding to support public education in Montgomery County.
Thanks for the question, Adam. So does anybody else have a question? Don't be shy. Yes. And could you wait for the microphone here?
Hi, I'm Sasha Jones. I'm a senior at Rockville High School, and I was wondering, I know that the town halls have just started. You're planning on visiting several schools with these town halls. What's your main aim with the town halls as for communication and et cetera?
So I have to say, I didn't agree to any more town halls, so we still have to decide whether I'm going to do them or maybe one of my assistants. One of the good things about being a boss is that you can assign things to other people to do. So I have some very competent deputy superintendents. So I think it's a great opportunity to talk to students and hear the voice of students. I would say that one of the most challenging things about my position is I don't get opportunities to really talk to and hear the voice of students. Now, I have to say, Eric does a fantastic job. He is a great representative of the students. He is very good at articulating the student voice, and he does this by reaching out and talking to many of you in many different ways, using social media and a lot of other ways. So I depend on him to hear that student voice, but again, this is a great opportunity for us and for me to really get out and to hear what's important to you. Again, the setting here is asking me questions and my responding. Dialogues are even more important to me about just hearing the concerns and the interest that students have. And so this is just an opportunity to continue in that dialogue.
Thanks for the question. I would like to also take a minute. Two of my other colleagues have joined us in the studio in the back, Miss Rebecca Smondrowski and Miss Jill Ortman-Faust. So thank you guys for being with us today. Let's go to another question from our studio audience. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Yasmin Benderson, and I'm in 10th grade. So back to the budget. The county provides $300 annually for a music class of more than 30 students, which causes us to not have enough for transportation to performances, new music sheets, even concert attire. So I'm wondering, what exactly are the changes that you're going to make to the budget?
So again, one of the challenges is over that period of time, since 2009 that I've mentioned, we've actually cut hundreds of millions of dollars. So it has impacted a variety of programs, music programs, a lot of extracurricular programs, regular classroom settings. Again, your class sizes, I'm sure you've noticed in many situations, are larger. We've actually had to cut back on some special programs in some of our schools. And so one of the challenges is, even when we begin, assuming we are able to get some more money back, there's a lot of competing demands and interests, a lot of places that we have to consider. And that's the difficult work of the superintendent and the Board of Education, to hear from students, from our parents, from our staff, from the community about what the priorities are, what the interests are, and then to sort through all of that. The challenge in the last 7 years is most of that sorting through is what we have to cut, not what we have to add. And so my hope is that the county will be in a better position soon to be able to begin to restore some dollars, and then have the questions about what are those programs, what are those extracurricular activities, what are the supports and resources that we really need in order to improve the educational opportunities for all of our students.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that that's something that we're all working on, and we're all hopefully creating a budget that works for our students and comes out in the best interest of all of our students. So with that, let's go to another question. Don't be shy. All right, let's go to a question from the pre-submitted questions from students in Rockville High School, many of whom are watching in their classrooms today. So one of our questions was, what is being done to hire a more diverse teaching staff?
So I think everybody here knows Montgomery County has changed dramatically over the last 40 years. When I started working in Montgomery County Public Schools, probably about almost 90% of our students were white. Now, about 30% of our students are white. So the county has changed dramatically over that period of time. Our teaching workforce has not changed as rapidly. And so we need to put in place strategies that address the need to hire a teaching workforce that looks more like our students do. So we've put in place a number of measures this year. We just got started a little less than a year ago to find ways to be able to attract teachers to Montgomery County. Part of the challenge is that we're all facing is that we depend on universities and colleges to produce a teaching workforce that is as diverse as the county, as the country. And that's not happening. So we have to go far beyond Maryland in order to do our hiring. We put in place an ambassador program which takes teachers and principals, it's about 80 or 90 people, and asking them to go back to their alma mater and to begin to make connections with the deans of education and actually meeting with students who are in education programs in those schools and try to encourage them to come to Montgomery County Public Schools to teach. We've done a lot of that with historical black and colleges and universities. We've made some great relationships with Howard University and with Bowie State. We also have a program which we are very encouraged about, but it's a longer term strategy. And it's a STEP program, so it's a student teacher education program, and we're taking high school students who are interested or might be interested in becoming a teacher and actually engaging them in their senior year in this program. And then we're going to try to continue working with them as they go through college and encouraging them to come back to Montgomery County Public Schools. Currently, about 1/4 of all the teachers that we hire actually graduated from high school in Montgomery County. And so we really need to encourage more, and it's very different in terms of the high schools that they come out of. So there's some high schools where over the last 5 years of our teacher hiring, we've hired almost 100 teachers from one high school, and then there's others where we've only hired 4 or 5. And so this is an opportunity to really look at identifying students while you're still in high school, encouraging you to think about education and what a great profession it is, and then working with these students as they get into college, making sure they're on track to graduate, hopefully stay in education, and then potentially come back to Montgomery County Public Schools. One other thing we're also doing is our supporting services workforce. So from media assistants to bus drivers to paraeducators is a much more diverse workforce in Montgomery County. And so we also have programs where we're encouraging these individuals to go back to college to either get a bachelor's or a master's degree in education. We provide some incentives for them to do that. And so we've been hiring probably 60 to 70 teachers a year out of our supporting services workforce. So making sure that we're encouraging a very diverse group of our supporting services employees into this program. So we have a number of strategies. This is all longer term. It's going to really take time. We can't change the numbers where we currently are. Currently, about 75% of our teacher workforce is white. So in order to get it to reflect our student body much more closely, it's going to take a number of years to get there, but we put a lot of strategies in place to address that.
Yeah, and really establishing those strong relationships with our teachers we all know is very important. So having a teacher workforce that we can connect to means a lot to us as a student body to continue to make progress. So with that, let's go to another question from our studio audience. Yeah.
So I was wondering,
Could you
my name is Xavier Rivera, and I'm a senior. And I was wondering how the capital improvement program worked and how it's going to be implemented this term.
So the capital improvements program is basically what I call the brick and mortar. So the capital budget is the budget that funds both the construction of new schools, the addition of schools, the renovation like we did here at Rockville. It also pays for replacing windows, roofs, systemic replacement like heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Montgomery County is a big school system. Most people have trouble understanding how big and complex we are. We have almost 25 million square feet of space, building space in Montgomery County Public Schools. I indicated that we've grown by almost 18,000 to 19,000 students since 2009. We're going to grow by another over 10,000 students in the next 6 years. Almost all of those students, about 4,800 or so, are going to be middle schools and more than 5,000 in high schools. That's the equivalent of building at least 3 to 4 more middle schools and 3 new high schools. So we obviously need a lot of dollars in order to do that, to keep up with that growth and to catch up, because we weren't able to catch up with all of the growth in the elementary schools, and most of those 19,000 students that have come since 2009 are in elementary schools. So we need a lot of additional dollars. We've gone to the state. We've asked them for some additional ways in which to fund the budget. We haven't gotten all the support that we need from the state. We're going to continue to work on that. In the county, our requests, our needs actually compete with other capital budget needs. So roads, as Montgomery County is growing, we need to build more roads, more libraries, more fire stations and things like that. So we're in competition. Dollars are always limited. So we've made our needs known, and again, we are requesting for next year. The board approved a capital budget request of $1.72 billion over the next 6 years to address the needs, the growth, the need to renovate building, as well as the need to maintain many of our older buildings.
Thanks for the question. And also included in that $1.7 billion include plans that students have been talking about in terms of concerns with the heating and air conditioning systems in their schools, and also with the field conditions. So Mr. Bowers recommended $11 million to implement turf fields in all 19 high schools that don't already have one. So that's certainly a consideration to keep in mind for our athletes and for students who are in PE classes, and just so that we're comfortable in our schools every day. Whether it's the temperature of the room can certainly have an impact on our ability to learn throughout the day.
So the capital budget also includes another expenditure, which is computer technology. So all of our Chromebooks are paid for out of that capital budget. There's actually $150 million over the next 6 years to support our technology program. We're rolling out the Chromebooks a little bit more slowly than we had hoped. In the budget request that the board has made to the county council, there's a request to finish the Chromebook purchase in 7th grade, purchase Chromebooks for 8th grade, and then another grade level in the high school. So it's a lot slower than we wanted to. By next year, we had hoped to finish the plan, which meant that we would have completed all of the technology purchases for Chromebooks in our high schools. It's just going to be delayed a little bit.
All right, let's take another question from our studio audience. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Shoshana Wall, and I'm in 10th grade. Will students have a say in the assignment that will place the final exam?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
Will students have a say in the assignments that will replace the final exam?
So in terms of what we have decided is we're not going to have end of the semester 2-hour final examinations in our high schools beginning next year. What's going to replace them are going to be either quarterly assessments or some type of unit assessments that are going to really test the knowledge the students have of the content. So it's going to look different. It's just not going to look like a final exam. Actually, in different subject areas, it may look a little bit different. So in a science, it may be actually a project rather than a written final exam. The math exams really aren't going to look very different. And so they'll look a lot like the unit exams that we've been providing. The one question that we've asked for input on, and I know Eric has gotten a lot of input from students about how the grades on those assessments should be included in what the final grade is for the marking period in the semester. And so we still haven't made a decision about what the weight will have. As you know, the final exams have been worth 25% of the final exam, or have been weighted 25% of the final grade. So we still have to take a look at that, and we've got a lot of good input about how we go about and how decisions would be made about how the final grade will be decided.
Yeah, I think that the question which we're trying to answer, so the first question was, what role does assessments play in our classroom experience? And then from there we said, so if we don't go the traditional route with the 2-hour assessments, what will our report cards look like if we don't have those assessments? What will show up on a report card, and how will that be determined? So there's been a lot of moving pieces which we've been working out, but I thank Mr. Bowers and his team for the ambitious and progressive work that they've done over these last few months to implement the plan.
I mean, our hope is that what we will use assessments for is really to help give students better feedback about how they're doing, and to give teachers opportunities to reteach when students aren't getting it. In the end, our goal is to make sure that all of our students understand the content and are able to really be able to be successful in each of those content areas, and how can we do a better job to help make sure that happens. And so how can we engage you more closely in terms of what that looks like, providing you with regular feedback, timely feedback to understand what you've done well and what you haven't done well, what you need to work on, and then providing additional support to those students who need that additional support in order to be successful.
That was a really good question. Thank you for that one. Let's take another question. Yeah, in the back.
My name is Karina.
Hold on, could you wait for the, thank you.
My name is Karina Romero, and I am in 10th grade, and my question is, how does the county feel about students pursuing high school graduation in a fast-track 3-year program?
So, you know, we're working on a lot of partnerships with universities, and so one of the interests on the part of the state legislature a couple of years ago, when they enacted a college and career readiness program, they included language in that about dual enrollment with colleges and universities. And so we've been pursuing, and Montgomery County Public Schools had some programs prior to that, but we've really been pursuing other ways to provide students with additional opportunities to enroll in college courses at the same time you're enrolled in high school, and actually getting college credit for those courses. I think that we have some opportunities in some of our high schools. We're using an early college program, in which case many of our students in those schools will have an opportunity to really get a number of college credits while they're still in high school. And so bridging the experience between high school and college while you're still in high school. Now, that may look different, and I know I've talked to the superintendents from around the state. In some states, students are actually going to the college campus and taking many of those credits. We actually do that at Wooten, where students go to the universities of Shady Grove. The reason we did that was more a space reason than it was any other reason. In other places, in other schools, we actually have professors from Montgomery College come into the high school to teach the courses. But again, I think this is all changing a lot, but I think the idea is that what does college level work look like, and where do you do that college level work? Are you still a junior or senior in high school? And what does it look like in terms of providing those experiences and those opportunities for those students who really are ready to move on and do that college level work before you've graduated from high school?
I think that's a perfect segment into another one of our questions submitted from other students at Rockville High School, which was, what are your plans to close or at least narrow the achievement and college readiness gap?
So this is a significant challenge in terms of the numbers of students. For those of you who are 11th graders, you should know that this year all 11th graders are going to have to show that they're college and career ready based on how you score on certain tests. So it's either the SAT, the ACT, or the Accuplacer. And we found with the recent results that have come out from the PARC assessments, that many of our students are not attaining those levels of what is considered college and career readiness. Unfortunately, many of our students who've gone to Montgomery College over the past decade have not been deemed by the college to be college and career ready, and have had to enroll in remedial classes rather than credit-bearing classes. It would be my hope in the long term that we could really change that and not have students have to take remedial classes when they go to college because they're not prepared in mathematics or in reading, language arts, English, literacy. And so my priorities this year, I've established some strategic priorities, building the foundation for academic success, looking at math and literacy. It begins in elementary school. We really need to look at and are looking at how we are instructing students in mathematics and literacy in elementary schools, making sure they're prepared to move on to doing in mathematics, algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, in English, with all of the skills they need to be successful. So we have some work as a system to look at our curriculum, to look at our resources, to look at our teacher training, to make sure that we have done everything we can to make sure that we're providing the supports and the interventions that students need to be successful. Another thing that I've put in place this year is to really put in a much stronger accountability system, holding schools accountable, holding principals accountable, holding individual teachers accountable for student outcomes. So we really have to build in the monitoring to make sure that if students aren't being successful, that principals and teacher and leadership teams in schools know about it, that I know about it and my staff knows about it, so we're monitoring it and we're making changes on a timely basis so that we can make sure students are successful. So it's about accountability also. And a third piece of the plan is really looking at partnerships. Partnerships with universities, partnerships with other county agencies, partnerships with community organizations, nonprofit organizations, because we know that we can't do this alone. We need to provide additional learning opportunities for many of our students who really can't afford it. Some families can afford to hire a tutor. Some families can afford to provide an SAT class, prep class for their children, and others can't. So we need to figure out how to help those families who can't do that get those resources, providing extended day, extended week, extended year opportunities to help make sure that all of our students have those math and literacy skills and have everything else they need in order to be college and career ready.
Thanks for the question. I also think it's important to note that it was not Mr. Bauer's decision to mandate that all 11th grade students take those one of those tests. It was actually the state of Maryland who is unfortunately imposing those testing requirements. But another question, which was from our audience outside of the studio today, was about the new bell times. And the question was, are you considering going back to the bell times? Nothing has changed except I have more time in the media center in the morning.
So we're going to be taking a look at that. There's obviously a lengthy conversation, a lengthy study. There was actually, I think, 2 studies that we came out with. We did get more input on this topic than any other topic in the 38 years that I've worked in the school system, from students, parents, the broader community. So there was a lot of input, a lot of discussion, a lot of people who were for change, a lot of people who were against change. And in the end, the board, as you know, moved the starting times back 20 minutes, 10 minutes in elementary schools. And you may not be aware, probably the greatest impact on all of this is what we call the second tier elementary schools. So those are elementary schools that don't start until 9:25 in the morning and don't end until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that has been probably the greatest challenge and the greatest amount of input we've received since we've done this in terms of concerns about it. So we're going to be preparing for the board a report, probably January or February, that will really gather a lot of information. What's the impact been? What are the concerns that have been raised? What are the issues? At that time, we really won't be talking much about options. I think that the board is committed to at least continuing for 1 more year the implementation, and then at that time, I have to say one of the reasons why we did what we did was, and a lot of the reason we do a lot of the things we do is because of money or the lack of money. Some of the different options that were talked about would have cost a lot more money because we've had to add a lot of buses, a lot of bus drivers. And so we were restricted in terms of the plan we came up with the current budget dollars that we were dealing with. And so that limited the options that we had. We could either move everything back later, or some of those other options were actually flipping and maybe putting elementary schools first. One of the options was actually putting middle schools last and starting middle schools at 9:30. So any of these options have some inherent challenges and problems and are going to have some concerns by everybody. So I think it's something that we need to continue to gather some data on, provide that information to the Board of Education, have them review all of that, and consider longer term if they do want to make any additional changes.
Could we do a quick show of hands? Who's liking the new bell time so far, or seeing some sort of pretty good, and who's not liking it so much, and do we have anyone who's sort of neither here nor there? There's not been much of an impact. Okay. Does somebody want to speak to an experience that they've had or a change that they've experienced with this new bell times? Or yeah.
I'm Sarah. I'm a senior, and I think the 20 minutes doesn't help us get more sleep because people will stay up 20 minutes later, and it doesn't really, you don't feel more refreshed after that 20 minutes. And the biggest thing for me is after school activities, because it just means getting home probably half an hour later than I would, which means less time for homework and other things that need to be going on at home. So that's my biggest criticism of that.
Thanks. So let's take another question from the audience. Yeah, in the back. And then we'll go to you.
Hi, Robbie Adhikari, senior. I was wondering, concerning the earlier topic of staff position cuts and such, I was wondering, with what mindset does the board and all consider a position necessary to the school, and with what mindset do they cut positions from the school?
So it's a really difficult and challenging process as we look through the potential reductions. We actually have a budget review committee that is made up of parent leadership, leadership from some of our African American and Latino communities, and representatives from our unions who spend a significant amount of time, and we have spent since beginning of September, going through the budget. We probably spend 45 to 50 hours of meeting, going through all the different positions, all the different programs, debating, discussing what we can't cut, what we absolutely can't cut, what we might consider cutting, and then what are the implications of that, and then what we should cut, and not because we might not need it, but just because, again, if we have to make some reductions, which ones are going to have the least impact on students and on instruction. So the first criteria that is used is trying to protect the classroom and trying to protect the resources and supports that are provided to students. And so a lot of the conversation is looking at different positions, different programs, and trying to ascertain what the impact is going to be on the instructional program and on students if we cut it back or if we eliminate it. In many cases, what we do is we haven't eliminated a lot, we've actually just cut back on the level of service so we haven't been able to or willing to actually give up that program or that support, but we said maybe we can do with a little bit less of it. And so those are extensive conversations that we have. Then we actually give the board the budget. I'll be submitting my budget to the board on December 8th. A lot of public input is received from students, parents, and others about the recommendations that the superintendent made, looking at different programs, looking at different challenges that we have, and the board goes through a process of really making its decision. So it's a very extensive process. And then Montgomery County Public Schools, is fiscally dependent on the county council. So even after we make those decisions, we still have to go to the county council and ask for the money to fund our budget. In many cases in which we haven't been getting that money. So at that time, then we have to go back again and take a look at, if we don't get those dollars, what are those decisions that we're going to have to make? And that's based on all of those discussions we've had over not only the previous 6 to 9 months, but looking back at what we did last year, the year before that, and over the last 5 years. So a great deal of my time, I do spend more time on the operating budget than any other topic that I have to address.
Thanks for the question. And I think we had another question right here.
Hi, my name is Grace Dalmeda, and I'm in 10th grade. And students have lost the use of Media Center after school due to the reduction in staff. And this harms the students that don't have computer or Wi-Fi at home. So since this mainly harms our minority and low economic students, how can we promote equity when these cuts are made?
So, and that's a good question related to the budget I talked about, and there's been a lot of discussion around that. I'd say 2 things. One, those are very, again, when we make reductions like that, those are difficult reductions, and again, this is a good example that it in fact is impacting students. And so I'd say as a follow-up, we then need to look at ways in which we can address that situation. So you've identified a problem or a concern that the access to the computers is not available anymore because of staffing. So I would suggest that individual schools need to take a look at that and how they might address that. And it also brings up the opportunity that I talked about before of working in partnership with other organizations. How might they help us address that situation? So I think that's a really good example of a problem, a loss in support and service that we need to address, and should we as a school system, and how can individual schools address that specific need?
Thanks for the question. Is there another one from our audience? Yeah.
My name is Luke Smith. I'm a junior. I was wondering, earlier you mentioned that the math exams will look a lot the same. Will they be very similar? Are significant changes coming? Because the math exams in this county have been kind of iffy for the past few years.
So I mean, obviously they're changing a little bit. So last year this was the first time when we redid the Algebra 2 course based on the Common Core State Standards. So there are some changes that are taking place by rewriting our math curriculum. So they are looking a little bit different. I mean, I like to have the conversation because everybody talks about the Common Core Standards and the new math. When I was in high school many, many years ago, we talked about the new math. And so mathematics has changed a lot. And so my wife does some tutoring of some 5th graders who are struggling in math. And she always takes the opportunity to tweak me by giving me 5th grade questions, most of which I can't answer because of how mathematics has changed. I know you ask a lot of parents and they say, well, I used to be good at math, but I can't help my child anymore in mathematics because I just don't get it because they're teaching it so differently. So there are still some changes. We still have to work through all of that in terms of not only what the curriculum looks like, but what the resources look like that we're providing to students, and also helping teachers teach that curriculum so that students are getting it. Part of that requires teachers who really understand math well, and that's part of the challenge in our elementary schools. So that's part of the challenge too. So we've got some work to do on mathematics.
So I think we're going to take one more question from our studio audience before we're out of time. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jackson. I'm in 10th grade, and I was wondering, do you think the addition of the school resource officers was an overall good thing, especially considering the growing tensions between police and the general populace?
So I think the answer to that is absolutely yes, because the whole point of the school resource officers is to reduce those tensions. It was to have police be able to get to know students in the school setting and really be able to create relationships and to bridge what's going on in schools into the community. So, and I can't say it's working well everywhere that way, but that really was the intent of having police get to know students well, get to see them in a different light, and then be able to really work with them not only in school but outside of the school to deal with a lot of the challenges that are faced outside of the school. So I think it certainly, that was the purpose of it, and I think it has a lot of potential.
Thanks for that question. So that's all the time we have for this student town hall. I would like to thank our studio audience from Rockville High School for their excellent questions and for coming out, and for the rest of the student body for being engaged in this discussion in your classrooms. I'd also like to thank Mr. Bowers for being my guest on this student town hall. Our next student town hall will be at Carver Educational Services Center, and we'll be talking about money and the operating budget and the impacts that it has on our schools. So you can, I hope that everybody will tune in. You can see it on the Montgomery County Public Schools website, where you can also watch this student town hall. And I would also like to thank Principal Billie Jean Benson for her warm welcome and for having us today. So thanks to you guys, and thank you very much, Mr. Bowers.